My dad caught me sleeping one day when I was supposed to be practicing. I was like 4.5 or 5 years old. And he came in, I was sleeping in a chair at my violin, and he gave me this speech about how if you want to be a great musician, you have to practice a lot, and that I really want to play the violin or the drums. Easy answer. Hi, I used to live here.
Did you?
Yeah, my grandfather built this house.
Wow.
I grew up in it. It was like I was raised in America, but in Italy. My grandmother and grandfather lived across the street, had a store. My dad wanted to be a drummer. I mean, that was his lifelong dream. He was a prize fighter. When he married my mother, she bought him a set of drums to make him quit fighting. And he became a poultry salesman. But he played the drums all the time.
Right? Put your hands up. What? Hasn't it come over the top? Get you to the right. So fast.
In the Granelli side of the family, you know, there are two things that we did, which was like you fought and there was music.
My dad was a pure creature of emotion, you know. You never knew which side you were going to get either. You know?
He was this big guy, and he didn't talk to you, he only yelled at you. You know, he didn't, like, that was his form of communication, was just yelling.
He'd come home at 2 or 3 in the morning, wake me up, and he would have brought fresh, hot donuts. And we'd sit there and eat donuts until I couldn't eat any more donuts, you know. The first recollection I have is my dad showing me how to play the hi-hat. Then the advanced thing was to play.
I've known Jerry for, you know, all of his life practically. I guess he was maybe 10 years old when I first met him.
Kenny was like my guardian, you know. He's like, oh, take it easy on the kid, you know. Like he would say that to my dad, and it was like.
I was always looking out for him, you know. He's a little kid, you know. Come on, he's a little kid. What's the matter with you guys?
If you're 8 years old or 6 years old and somebody who you want to love you is telling you you're stupid, oh, you know, that's got to kind of undercut your confidence in yourself. My mother went to every drum lesson I ever took when I was a kid.
She was the juggler. She kept all the balls in the air. She tried to make everybody happy, and I think she pulled it off most of the time.
By the time I was 13, I was out playing in a band called the Rhythmeers. We played all the Catholic high school dances. Once a week, I would go with my uncle and my dad and hear all the great big bands, Benny Goodman, Count Basie, Duke Ellington. And I'd go see all those drummers and get collections of drumsticks. I had a drawer full of drumsticks from every drummer who came through there. You know, like after school, all the kids would go have a hamburger and stuff, you know, and I'd drop everybody off and I'd go home and practice 4 hours. I really wanted to do it good.
I think it was something that everybody understood, and that's what he did. And they all had, you know, his persona as a drummer was all very much in place.
That was my hip ticket. That was my ticket, man. I was Jerry Granelli. I could play the drums, you know, and people wouldn't beat the band up, you know. Some sort of independence. In those days, you had to play your hi-hat always on 2 and 4, so it was like this thing. Bebop was hard. You know, and there were no books that you could practice independence out of in those days. You had to hear it or get to see somebody do it. So it just started to get pieced together. The more I heard, more of the riddle started to make sense. So you'd hear a record and you'd try to figure out how the hell Philly Joe was going. You know. You're like, oh, how's he doing that? How's he doing that? You know, you'd go crazy. And then you get to see Philly Joe and you could see the way he moved his body. And I knew there was something I didn't understand musically. But I also knew there was something technically that was holding me back. Then I heard the great drummer Joe Morello play this drum solo on Sounds of the Loop with the Dave Brubeck Quartet. I can't even do it. And I went, whoa, that's it. I put it on, I almost wore that groove out. I was blown away because a drummer was using one hand where you would have to use two hands before. I went to this famous drum store there called Drumland, Kenny Williams, and I'm like moping around because I've heard it now, but I don't know where this guy is. And I said, oh, I just heard this guy, Joe Morello. And he's like, oh, do you mind, Kenny talking, oh, you want to take a lesson with Joe? I was like, yeah.
He would say, okay, well, now I'm going to give you a lesson. I'm going to give you this lesson, and when you come back, I want this lesson down. And I want to tell you up front, because it's not the bucks, you got to have this lesson down, or we're going to have to discontinue, our association with each other as student and teacher. They got into these endurance things, I'd lock up the shop, and they'd be in the, in the little studio. But I'd look in there sometimes, and I could see Joe sweating, I'm going to push up the metronome a little bit. Okay, Jerry? Yeah, fine, Joe. So, it was a challenge for both of them, and it was a healthy challenge.
I guess it was in the last 6 months of our high school experience we started dating. Jerry had been a little more interested in me than I was in him earlier on.
Jackie was tight with my mom. And, she was an Italian girl from the neighborhood. And what you did in the 50s, man, is you got married. That was it.
I used to go to the jazz workshop all the time and study. Every saxophone player came through that. Lockjaw Davis, Johnny Griffin, Dexter Gordon, John Coltrane. One night I was playing in Bob City. When I got off the bandstand and catching the back, said, man, John Coltrane was in town, said, he liked the way you played. I said, what? He let me come see him. I knocked on the door. 1 o'clock exactly. He opened the door, he said, come in. I was so nervous. What I had in my mind, he would tell me some secret. He said, practice, man. What the fuck is practice? I know that. 2 or 3 months later, it hit me across the head. Nobody can teach you how to play.
Right.
You have to learn yourself.